welcome back to Classic Gamer 74. I'm your host Anthony Gamer, and today we're going to be starting our unit on the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System, and its Japanese counterpart, the Famicom. So before we get started, I want to thank all of you for the viewing. It really means a lot to me. If you haven't already, please subscribe and don't forget to like. It really helps the channel a lot. So without further ado, let's get into the Famicom itself first.
Alright, so let's start talking about the Famicom. Now, the Famicom was released on July 15th, 1983, and its original name was the Home Cassette Type Video Game Family Computer, and originally sold for about 14,800 yen, which is 18,400 yen nowadays. And it was released with 3 ports of Nintendo's successful arcade games, Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., and Popeye. Initially, Nintendo only planned to release in-house games, but then eventually relented and released some games by Namco and Hudson Soft. By 1985, more than 2.5 million Famicom units had been sold in Japan, and they announced plans to release it in North America. After a couple years of beta testing at different places, the Nintendo Entertainment System would officially be released in the United States on September 27, 1986. Upon its release in North America, Nintendo brilliantly released 17 launch titles, and they are 10-Yard Fight, Baseball, Clue Clue Land, Excitebike, Golf, Gyromite, Hogan's Alley, Ice Climber, Kung Fu, Pinball, Soccer, Stack Up, Tennis, Wild Gunman, and Wrecking Crew. Of course, the most famous was Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt. This combo was the pack-in title for many years for the NES. Now let's talk a little bit more about these two iconic game systems themselves.
Alright, so here we have the actual Famicom. I got this online. Now, getting one of these isn't really that difficult, and they're not really that expensive. This is an actual Famicom, not a Famiclone, which I'll show you in just a moment. As you can see, it's quite a bit different looking than the NES that we're used to on this side of the world. The controls are hardwired in, as you see, so you can't take them off, which again kind of stinks, but you know, eventually they made the change for that, I think. So anyway, pretty sturdy, very well made, I have to add. I got this for around 50 bucks, which is about the average price that they go for. So if you've ever thought about adding one of these to your collections, it's a great idea. Also, don't forget that any American NES cartridges don't work on here. There's a few lesser number of pins on this sucker, so you would actually have to get Famicom games, which again, those don't run too expensive either. And here we have the NES itself. Yep, this is the original one, or the original format, I should say, the box one with the flip up top, as you see. And of course, the NES cartridges themselves are a little bit bigger than the Famicom counterparts. I believe they have 70 pins. I think it's like a 60-70 split or something like that. But regardless, this is the original NES that was released here in North America. And if you've ever wanted to play Famicom games on a regular NES, you can. With this sucker right here, it's called the 60 to 72 pin adapter. So yeah, it's the Famicom has 60 pins and the NES has 72. So again, you can play your Famicom games if you are able to get a hold of some, and don't really want to get a Famicom. I recommend getting something like this here. It just slides on the end of the cart and you just plug it right into your console deck, and it works great. What this is right here, this is a Famiclone. It looks a lot like a regular Famicom, except for, of course, the controllers do plug in on the front. It has this lid. I think the other one had one too, but when I got it, it didn't come with it. It's got the same eject button, but on the back you can see that it's got hookups for modern television. Let me get a little closer for you there so you can see these in the back. Another thing to let you know, if you ever plan on getting one of these, the Famiclones, they're about the same price as a regular Famicom, maybe a little bit cheaper. But remember, the FDS, the Famicom Disk System, does not work with this thing. and I'll get into that a little bit later in another episode where I discuss the Famicom disk system. But all Famicom carts that I have work on here just fine, and a lot of times you can find some really cool multi-carts that will work on here, but I'm having a little trouble getting them to work on a regular Famicom. So honestly, it's probably a good idea to get both, but that's just me.
All right, so let's talk about the games. After all, that's what we're here for, right? All right, now one thing you have to remember is that Nintendo wanted to be very, very careful to make sure that another video game crash did not happen. And so they set up some very tough restrictions for third-party game companies. Now, Dan Kitchen went into a lot of detail on my interview with him about how that worked. And in a lot of ways it wasn't fair, but basically in a lot of ways they were trying to make sure that you didn't have a lot of crap games come out there so that we didn't have another video game crash, which luckily we have not had another one. So therefore, Nintendo made sure that they would have to authorize all the games that would come out for their game system. All officially licensed Nintendo games would pretty much look alike. They would all be in this gray cartridge like you see right here. Plus, they would all have this Nintendo seal of approval on the carts as well as on the boxes. And also to prevent some sneaky third-party people from making games available that did not meet Nintendo's seal approval, they put a lockout chip in the console itself. That's not to say all NES games were great, because let's face it, they weren't. I mean, you can watch episodes of The Angry Video Game Nerd and find out there were some stinkers. However, there were also some unlicensed games that did make their way through, and some of them were pretty good. Looking at this game, Bible Adventures, I actually really enjoyed this game. But it's kind of interesting how a Christian game company was able to find a way to get through that lockout chip. So take that for what it is. Regardless, during its lifetime, the NES/Famicom had some amazing games. I mean, great games. So we're going to be on this unit for a little while. You're looking at one of my all-time favorite NES titles right here, River City Ransom. And I will have an episode dedicated to this great game. Now let's talk about some of the peripherals, and no other peripheral failure can be compared to that of Rob, the robotic operating buddy. Now, Rob would be packed in with some versions of the NES. These would come with Rob, that you're looking at him right here, and the two games that he functioned with, that being Gyromite and Stack Up. Rob, unfortunately, was a colossal failure. He was fun for about, a couple hours after you first got it, and I had a fully functional Rob, and I had both Gyromite and Stack Up back in the day. Unfortunately, it was kind of a pain to get him going and, use the spinners and stuff, and like I said, he was only useful for 2 games. Unfortunately, after that, he kind of faded away and wasn't really talked about much anymore. Honestly, though, I still wish I had the one that I had in high school, because they go for big bucks nowadays. The one I have now doesn't work anymore, and I used to use them as a side character early in my channel, but anyway, if any of you had a Rob back in the day or still have it, and you still play with it, or you love it or hate it, let me know about it in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your stories. All right, so let's talk about a couple add-ons that actually were successful. Now, for those of us that love Nintendo and love playing those high-action games, sometimes it was a lot of work to hit those buttons really hard, and that's why they had the Max controller. You had the Turbo A and Turbo B, which really helped out a lot in some games. Actually, if it wasn't for the Max controller, there were some games I probably would not have beat, and I got one to this day. Now, some people didn't really like the idea of the gamepad, and unfortunately, it's pretty much stuck around since then. But for those people that really still love the joystick, Nintendo released the NES Advantage, in which you could play your games with a joystick. Now, as you can see, it also had the turbo buttons and all the other cool stuff. I didn't have one of these back in the day because I adjusted pretty well to the joypad, but these are actually pretty reasonable. And for you old school gamers that really prefer the joystick, this thing's quite affordable, and I highly recommend it. The Zap Gun, as this was packed in with most versions of the NES and was used for some great games. It was used in such great games as Hogan's Alley. Of course, the game it's most remembered to be used with is Duck Hunt. The pack-in title was Super Mario Bros. Unfortunately, even if you have an NES today, this light gun doesn't work. I believe that there is a new version out there that somebody made so that you can play it on modern televisions, but I'm not exactly sure. Regardless, back in the day, this game was a whole lot of fun. And to close out this video, let's talk about some of those great game franchises that got their start on the NES. Some of them still around today, some have been neglected, but regardless, let's check some of those out. First off, we have the Mega Man series. Now, I'll be honest, I really wasn't into this series as a kid, but I've kind of rediscovered it and I'm really getting into it. This amazing platformer game is still going today with various iterations and some fan-made games, and I think it's going to be around for a while. Next up, we have Metroid. Yes, this series is definitely one that really set the bar pretty high for platforming games, and it's the first game, as far as I know, to have a female protagonist, that being Samus, as she battles against the evil Mother Brain. Back in the day, I didn't play this one much either, mostly because I wasn't any good at it, but, I've also rediscovered it, and I'm going to beat this game someday. Castlevania. This Konami franchise got its start here on the NES, and for many years we have watched the Belmont clan, led by Simon, as they battle against the forces of evil, particularly Count Dracula, and this is the game that started it all. Punch-Out! Now, yeah, I know this game did get its start in the arcade, but when it was released on console, I can't tell you how many hours I spent playing this game, beating up on guys like Glass Joe, Sandman, King Hippo, and all those guys. They haven't made a Punch-Out game since the Wii game, which was really awesome. And let's hope they do continue this series. I do notice that Little Mac himself does tend to pop up from time to time in other games. Zelda. Yep. This really awesome franchise that is still going strong today with its many amazing sequels, excluding the ones on the CDI, of course. But for many years now, we have watched Link as he has tried to save the world of Hyrule from Ganon and other evil forces. And of course, we can't forget Mario, this little plumber in the original mascot for Nintendo, has been going strong all these years and still making games, a movie, and he's going to probably be around until the end of time, and that's a good thing. And last but certainly not least, we have Kirby. This cute little marshmallow guy has been beating up his enemies and absorbing their powers for many years now and doesn't show any signs of slowing down. You gotta love this guy. In our next episode, we will begin discussing rare and valuable games for the NES.
Well, that brings this episode of Classic Gamer 74 to a close. I really hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, let me know by giving me a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to click that little bell icon down there so you'll be notified when I upload any new material. Please check out our Patreon page. I think you guys will really enjoy it. If you can contribute $1 a month, that would be just great. It will really help this channel. I've got some cool stuff on there you're not going to find anywhere else, like special episodes, walkthroughs, music videos, all kinds of cool stuff. So please be generous and help us out on Patreon. The link is in the description below. Well, until next time, this is Anthony Gamer saying have yourselves a great week. Be strong, be safe, be happy, be healthy, be cool, and above all, take care of each other, be kind to each other, and stop hate of all kinds. See you soon. Bye, everybody.